Hey guys, Drew Cook here, 2019 Bassmaster Elite Series Rookie of the Year, and I'm going to go in depth about all the places that we went and how I won this blue trophy, like talking about my MVPs for the year, like Fighting Frog, maybe a Trick Stick, some Limit Makers, and a Smell Like Smasher. Stop number one, St. Johns River. First full moon in February. Spawning fish. Wham bam, thank you ma'am. Tilapia Magic, 4-inch Fighting Frog. 4-aught Gamakatsu G Finesse hook, 1/4 ounce weight. And a little bit of swim jig action with a Fighting Frog trailer as well. For bed fishing, there's a Dobbins Champion XP 744, 20-pound Seaguar InvisX, 4-aught Gamakatsu G Finesse heavy cover hook, and a 1/4 ounce tungsten. So for the swim jig, I'm throwing it on a 734 Champion XP with 50-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid with a Nichols Lures sledgehammer swim jig, and this is a 1/2 ounce. And I take that Fighting Frog, rig it upside down with good brim profile. It's awesome when the fish are spawning. So stop number two, Lake Lanier in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and pretty much everything that I caught was all on a red crankbait, and they were up shallow. I'm throwing it on a 765 Dobbins Champion XP crankbait rod with a medium gear ratio Shimano reel. I was throwing it on 12-pound Seaguar InvisX. I also had another one rigged up on 615 just for whatever depth I was in, but that was the main deal on Lanier. So then we go to stop number three at Lake Hartwell. Once again, 4-inch Tilapia Magic Fighting Frog, same deal, sight fishing, but there were some fish that you could catch around the floating docks and that were spawning that you couldn't see, and for that I was using a 5-inch super soft Trick Stick, and I was throwing either 8 or 10-pound Seaguar InvisX with 15-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid, 733 Dobbins Champion XP spinning rod with a new Shimano Stratic, and so that was the main deal. Throw those around while I was looking, and once I saw one, hunker down, catch him off the bed with the Fighting Frog. Stop number four at Winyah Bay. It was a tough event. It was a tidal fishery, but I caught a lot of fish Texas rigging a 3-inch Fighting Frog in tilapia or hematoma, or I had it on this Nichols Lures DB Finesse jigs, 3/8 ounce, and I was just flipping it around cypress trees. I had it on 20-pound Seaguar InvisX, and with the Texas rig, I had a really lightweight 1/4 ounce or 3/16 flipping around the cypress trees, and that's what I caught all my fish on at Winyah Bay. Lake Fork, stop number 5, Texas. My damage was on a Spro Roku shad, and I was throwing it on the 765 Dobbins Champion XP 15-pound Seaguar InvisX. But I mean, in Texas, I was upgrading these hooks on the Roku shad to big Gamakatsu EWG treble hooks, extra strong because for the big fish. So I catch a lot of them on the trap, and then whenever I needed something else, I was throwing a Spro Mixed Stick 115, and it's a slow floating jerk bait because I was fishing in dirt shallow water on a shell bed. And I was throwing it on a 704 Champion crankbait rod with a high gear ratio reel with 15-pound Seaguar InvisX again. And that tournament, I also, every day, I'd go up shallow because there were still some fish spawning, and wouldn't you know it, it's 4-inch Tilapia Magic Fighting Frog again. Same setup that you've seen so far. Nothing changed there. Made some crucial calls to make a top 10 there with the Fighting Frog. Yeah. Stop number 6, Lake Guntersville, and I had some shallow fish that I was catching them on a 3/8 ounce jackhammer, vibrating jig with a kamikaze swim on and with a pro swimmer, so 3.8 pro swimmer on the back of the chatterbait. It all just kind of depended on how deep I was in. I had one for if I was in more than 5 foot, I had the swim on it because it got down a little bit further. Less than 5 foot, I had the pro swimmer on it. And every day I would start the morning off throwing a frog or the toad up shallow in the grass. And this is the tour toad. What I really like about this thing is if it was cloudier or a little bit of ripple, I would just rip the frog to where I only had 3 left. So I didn't rip it all the way. I had 3 left, and to give it a lot more action, once the sun came out and the wind quit, I'd rip it all the way. It's a little bit more subtle than it's a lot louder whenever you don't rip the whole thing. So that was my setup for Guntersville. For the tour toad, I was throwing it on a 734 and a 735 Dobbins Champion XP with 50 pound Seaguar smackdown braid. I was putting a 5/0 Gamakatsu belly weighted swim bait hook, like an 1/8 ounce, just to keep it keeled right. With the chatterbait, both of them, I was throwing on 15 pound Seaguar and BizX, and I was throwing both of them on a Dobbins Champions 736 glass crankbait rod. It gives me a lot of tip to where you don't pull it away from the fish. Throwing that on a medium to fast retrieve reel. Next stop is the St. Lawrence River in New York. So in St. Lawrence, I was catching all my fish on drop shotting a chick magnet smallie smasher, or I was throwing a Ned rig, and I was catching them on the limit maker and the 3-inch trick stick, just dragging it with the current. It's really swift current up there. But either the Ned rig or the drop shot, it varied, day to day on which one they were going to eat. But those were my 2 go-tos. It was a tilapia limit maker and just a plain old green pumpkin 3-inch trick stick and chick magnet. It's a great goby imitation. All 3 of these, the drop shot with the smallie smasher, the Ned rig, was throwing both of them on 733 spinning rod, Dobbins Champion XP. The key up there with the current is you had to use 10 pound Seaguar smackdown braid, high vis, so you could see it, but that smaller diameter cut through the water because you got a lot of drag with that current. And I was using that on both of them with the Ned rig and the limit maker. I was using 10 pound on it, 8 pound maybe if I felt like it'd give me a bite. On the drop shot, I was using 8 pound or 6 pound Tatsu with it. And the reason why I was doing a little bit more heavier line on the Ned rigs because it's down there hitting the bottom, where your line tie is, getting those zebra mussels and hitting the rock stuff. The drop shot, it's 8-10 inches above it. You really didn't have to worry about that. Leaving St. Lawrence, going to Cayuga Lake, everything I caught was on a Fat Papa 70, and I was fishing outside grass lines. It really didn't matter the color as much as long as it was very natural toned down color, nothing really bright, really clear. Caught smallmouth and largemouth doing it, but another top 10 there. And leaving Cayuga, we go to 10 Killer. 10 Killer was a really tough event in Oklahoma, and all the fish that I weighed in all 3 days, the majority of them were on the Nichols Lures DB Finesse jig in DB Sungill with a 3-inch tilapia fighting frog, flipping it around anything on the bank. I had one bluff wall that was really good, any type of wood that was still in the water, but you always had to fill your limit. The size limit up there was pretty big for largemouth and smallmouth, but this is a prototype Spro square bill, and this is what I caught all my spotted bass on, and a couple of largemouth while I was cranking on the bluff walls. I was throwing this DB finesse jig with the 3-inch fighting frog on it on a 734 Champion XP, and I was also using it on a 744 Champion XP. The 744 I had 20 pound on. That was for like if I saw a bush that was, you know, off the bluff wall to flip into, that was the rod that I picked up. But for the normal flipping around and throwing down the bluff walls, I was throwing this on the 734, and I was throwing it on 17 pound Seaguar and VizX. Same setup, you know, high speed Shimano reel. At St. Clair, I was throwing the Fat Papa 70 on 15 pound Seaguar and VizX on the 765 Dobbins Champion XP. The Rock Crawler, I was throwing it on 12 pound in VizX with a 764 Dobbins Champion XP with a little bit higher gear ratio reel. You know, just to, and the smaller, thinner line helped this bait get down there a little bit further. It's a lot smaller than this. Whenever I turn around and work back down, you know, area that I already fished, I'd pick this one up and get some more bites. My favorite baits for the year, my real MVPs, once again, Fighting Frog, Tilapia Magic, Trick Stick, super soft Trick Stick in tilapia, Smalley Smasher, Limit Maker. Couldn't have done it without them. Well guys, this is what I used this year, my main players that helped me win the 2019 Bassmaster Elite Series Rookie of the Year.